On August 5th, 2025, the skies over Ukraine shook, and within seconds, Russian tanks from the north and Chinese warplanes from the south surged toward Ukrainian territory. The perfectly synchronized assault collapsed into chaos almost as soon as it began. Mine-clearing vehicles at the front swept the road, but the danger was not buried. It was moving. Remote-controlled anti-tank robots darted from irrigation ditches, slamming into the tracks of the first T-90M. The blast tore its turret free, sending it spinning through the air before crashing into a field. On the coast, Chinese landing craft burst into flames before their ramps could lower. Russia and China had gone from hunters to prey. Screams echoed across smoke-filled roads as fuel trucks erupted and armored hulls burned. Shattered squads tried to regroup, only to be cut down by precision fire from the ridgelines. A Chinese Marine, barely 20, stumbled from the surf, only to be struck down by a mortar blast seconds later. From the wheat fields and the tree lines, Ukrainian guns spoke with terrifying accuracy. There was no place to regroup, no air cover, no second chances. This was not a fair fight. It was a trap, and the invaders had rushed into it blindly. Beneath the fire, there was silence. Silence that only comes after hundreds of deaths. What had caused Russia and China to fail so badly? What was the trap? Come with me and find out. At 5:42 a.m., August 5th, 2025, the first alarms rang out across Ukraine's southern and eastern command posts. From the observation towers near Odessa to the radar bunkers outside Kharkiv, the screens told the same story. Two hostile forces, one from the sea and one from the land, moving with surgical precision toward Ukraine's heart. From the south, over the dark waters of the Black Sea, a Chinese aircraft carrier strike group broke formation. In the first wave, 10 advanced J-15 fighter jets roared into the gray dawn, afterburners trailing streaks of orange fire. Just seconds later, 5 Y-9G electronic warfare aircraft lifted off, flooding the spectrum with jamming signals meant to blind every radar dish along Ukraine's southern coast. Behind them, amphibious assault ships surged forward, their decks packed with 300 naval infantry, each ready to storm the beaches with brutal efficiency. From the north, along the Sumy Oblast frontier, Russia unleashed a mechanized spearhead that shook the ground. Leading the charge were 20 UR-77 mine-clearing vehicles, blasting paths through suspected kill zones. Behind them rolled 50 T-90M main battle tanks, their 125mm guns angled toward the horizon, carrying the weight of 500 Wagner-trained mercenaries and armored personnel carriers. Overhead, Su-24 MP radar suppression aircraft hunted for Ukrainian air defense sites, while 10 Su-34 bombers armed with 500-kilogram bunker-busting bombs circled into strike position. The combined force represented over $1.2 billion in war machines and manpower, converging on just 2 Ukrainian strongholds, chosen not for size, but for their control over supply lines and defensive fire corridors. This was not a feint. It was a two-pronged decapitation strike, engineered to split Ukraine's defenses, overwhelm its reaction time, and carve a path of fire deep into its territory. But beyond the enemy's field of vision, under the quiet cover of wheat fields and rural roads, Ukraine had already seen this coming. And the trap they had prepared would turn this day into a catastrophe for both Moscow and Beijing. Before you know what the trap is, tell me where in the world you are watching the video from. The enemy believed Ukraine was blind. In reality, the first warning had come 9 hours earlier, when 2 American-made MQ-9B Sky Guardian drones, flying silent patrols over the Mykolaiv and Sumy regions, picked up irregular formations on their synthetic aperture radar. At 20,000 feet, their infrared sensors painted a chilling picture. 2 separate armored thrusts, Russian from the north, Chinese from the sea, both moving on a collision course toward Ukraine's defensive grid. By 10:15 p.m. the night before, the Ukrainian General Staff had already convened a crisis cell. Their plan was not to meet steel with steel. It was to make the enemy walk willingly into a killing ground. Orders were sent to power down all active radar along the targeted corridors, making the airspace look exposed, unguarded. Artillery units repositioned under the cover of darkness. Special forces disappeared into irrigation culverts and abandoned farmhouses. At the heart of the trap was a weapon the enemy had never encountered: 50 remote-controlled, mobile anti-tank mine robots. Each one, the size of a large toolbox on tracks, carried a 12-kilogram shaped charge capable of piercing 750 millimeters of composite armor. At 5:53 a.m., as the Russian spearhead rolled into the undefended zone, their 20 UR-77 mine clearers swept the ground ahead and found nothing. That was the point. The mine robots had sidestepped into drainage ditches, waiting. The moment the T-90M tanks followed into the cleared lanes, the robots surged forward. One slammed into the lead tank's left track. The explosion tore the turret free, hurling it 46 feet into the air. Two more tanks behind it swerved, colliding in the chaos. On the southern coast, Chinese landing craft were closing to within 1.5 nautical miles of the shore, unaware that above them, loitering munitions had already locked their heat signatures. The jaws of the trap were closing, and both invaders were still charging forward, straight into annihilation. What do you think of the Ukrainian trap? Support us by liking and subscribing. Now join me in watching the trap in action. At 5:58 a.m., 5 minutes after the first T-90M exploded under the charge of a mobile mine robot, the air above the battlefield shifted. From beyond the ridgeline north of Sumy, the muffled thump of hydraulic recoil systems broke the morning haze. 12 Tu-22 Bohdana, self-propelled howitzers opened fire in unison. Their GPS-guided shells, accurate to within 1.7 meters, began bursting over the Russian armored column at timed airburst height, shredding infantry with tungsten fragments before they could even dismount. The first 14 Russian vehicles in the column were either immobilized or engulfed in flames within 90 seconds. An ammunition carrier, hit dead center, erupted into a chain reaction of secondary blasts, each one brighter and louder than the last. The shockwave traveled half a mile, rattling windows in villages already evacuated the night before. Simultaneously, over the Black Sea coast near Odessa, the trap for the Chinese amphibious force detonated. From camouflaged revetments inland, 8 TB-2 Bayraktar drones and 6 Warmate loitering munitions launched in a coordinated strike. Traveling at over 90 knots, they dove onto the lead landing craft and troop-filled hovercraft. The first hit tore open the bow ramp of a Type 726 air cushion vessel, spilling armored vehicles into the surf like discarded toys. Seconds later, a direct strike on a troop carrier killed 47 Marines before they touched Ukrainian soil. From hidden tree lines flanking the northern corridor, Ukraine's rotary cannon batteries came alive. The Shkval 6, a 6-barrel anti-aircraft gun capable of firing 4,000 rounds per minute, swept the skies of incoming Russian and Chinese UAVs. In just over 3 minutes, 31 drones were reduced to falling debris, some detonating in mid-air, others spinning into empty fields as their guidance systems failed under heavy jamming. But the most devastating blow came from the splayed kill zones Ukraine had crafted the night before. As the Russian armored column attempted to maneuver around the burning wrecks ahead, they veered directly into a secondary mine belt hidden under shallow layers of loose soil. In less than 4 minutes, 9 T-90Ms and 6 BMP infantry fighting vehicles were ripped apart by sequential detonations, their crews either killed instantly or left scrambling into open ground under artillery fire. The chaos was total. Russian mercenaries tried to regroup behind a collapsed barn but were cut down by precision mortar fire guided by quadcopter drones hovering unseen above them. On the coast, the surviving Chinese Marines abandoned their landing craft, attempting to wade ashore under the cover of smoke grenades, only to be intercepted by sniper fire from elevated dunes where Ukrainian marksmen had been lying in wait for hours. By 6:09 a.m., both spearheads, the Russian from the north and the Chinese from the sea, were bleeding men, armor, and momentum. Neither had reached their target objectives. And yet, Ukraine's full counterattack had not even begun. The enemy was still in the kill box and the jaws were about to close even tighter. Don't leave yet. Destruction is still. By 6:10 a.m., smoke and fire had transformed both battlefronts into shifting walls of black and orange. But for Ukraine's commanders, this was the signal, not to hold the line, but to close it. The plan was months in the making. When the enemy stalled inside the kill zone, the noose would tighten from 4 directions at once. From the west of the Sumy corridor, 32 T-84 Oplot main battle tanks surged forward at 45 miles per hour, ceramic armor glinting through the haze. Each tank fired high-explosive anti-tank rounds that punched through Russian armor like paper. In the first 90 seconds, 7 more T-90DMs were obliterated. One round even passed clean through a BMP troop carrier, killing the squad inside and igniting its fuel tank before it rolled to a stop. On their flanks, mobile anti-aircraft platforms spun up, unleashing streams of 30mm shells skyward. The last surviving Chinese reconnaissance drones, 14 in total, were cut down in under 2 minutes, their wreckage raining down onto their own landing zones. From the east, Ukraine's 93rd Mechanized Brigade emerged from concealed positions in irrigation ditches and tree lines. They advanced behind a curtain of suppressive fire from 122mm Grad rocket batteries, each ripple launch saturating entire grid squares. The rockets weren't random. They targeted choke points where enemy survivors were likely to retreat. Within minutes, those escape lanes became burning barricades. Meanwhile, on the southern coast, the trap against the Chinese Marines was fully sprung. Ukrainian special forces, who had infiltrated shoreline bunkers before dawn, emerged with man-portable NLAW and Javelin launchers. In a span of 5 minutes, 6 additional landing craft were destroyed, 3 by direct hits to their engines, 2 by warheads detonating inside troop compartments, and 1 when its fuel tanks ignited, sending a plume visible for 7 miles. The beach was littered with abandoned rifles and overturned amphibious vehicles, many still smoldering. Then came the final blow to the Russian spearhead. As the surviving vehicles attempted to reverse out of the kill zone, they were herded toward what looked like an open road. In reality, it was lined with anti-tank mines buried at 2-meter intervals. The first explosion sheared the tracks off a lead tank, blocking the path. The second detonated beneath an armored personnel carrier carrying 9 mercenaries, killing all instantly. Within 3 minutes, the route was choked with burning wrecks, trapping the rest inside an ever-shrinking pocket. From above, Ukrainian drone operators watched the map turn red with target markers. Coordinates were relayed to mortar teams hidden in farmyards and abandoned barns. The resulting barrage fell with surgical precision, cutting down infantry clusters before they could regroup. By 6:22 a.m., the Russian-Chinese assault was no longer an attack. It was a rout. Yet there was nowhere to run. The battlefield had become a steel cage, and Ukraine held the only keys. By 6:25 a.m., the battlefield was no longer a contest. It was a collapse. In the north, the Russian spearhead lay in ruins. Black columns of smoke twisted into the sky from every single one of the 50 T-90M tanks that had entered the kill zone. Of the 500 elite mercenaries who had ridden in on armored carriers, fewer than 90 remained combat capable, and they were pinned, surrounded, and without ammunition. On the southern coast, the Chinese landing force fared no better. The sea was littered with the burning husks of 9 destroyed landing craft. Of the original 300 naval infantry, more than 200 were dead or missing. The rest huddled behind broken seawalls under sniper fire. A once proud amphibious assault had turned into a desperate fight for survival. At 6:27 a.m., Ukrainian loudspeakers crackled over both fronts, broadcasting in Russian and Mandarin. "You are surrounded. Surrender, and you will be treated under the laws of war." Many dropped their weapons. Others, too shocked to move, simply stared at the smoking wrecks that had been their only cover. Among the prisoners was a Russian lieutenant colonel carrying a ruggedized tablet. Inside, encrypted maps, radio frequencies, and operational plans for 2 more coordinated assaults scheduled within the next 48 hours. That intelligence alone could alter the shape of the entire war. By 6:30 a.m., the guns fell silent. What had begun as a $1.2 billion two-pronged decapitation strike had ended in less than an hour with the annihilation of both attacking forces. In total, 50 tanks destroyed, 20 mine-clearing vehicles neutralized, over 400 enemy troops killed, more than 150 captured alive. Ukraine's casualties were shockingly light. Fewer than 40 wounded, none killed in the primary kill zones. As medics moved in, one Ukrainian corporal knelt to give water to a trembling Chinese Marine, his hands still shaking from the cold surf. It was a quiet reminder that beneath the roar of artillery and the precision of engineering, this was still a war fought by human beings, sons, fathers, strangers. And for Russia and China, August 5th, 2025, would be remembered not as the day they split Ukraine's defenses, but as the morning they were shattered by them. The joint Russian-Chinese strike on August 5, 2025 was meant to be a show of force, a message to NATO, and the death blow to Ukraine's defensive lines. Instead, it became a case study in how precision, preparation, and patience can dismantle even the most formidable offensives. In less than an hour, Ukraine turned farmland into a minefield, turned silence into strategy, and turned an apparent weakness into an unbreakable wall. 70 armored vehicles lay destroyed, over 400 enemy troops lay dead, and more than 150 were marched away as prisoners, all while Ukrainian losses remained minimal. But beyond the numbers, the battle's lasting image was not one of burning tanks or sinking ships. It was the quiet moment when a Ukrainian soldier offered water to a captured Marine, proving that even in a war defined by drones, missiles, and machines, humanity still had a place on the battlefield. For Moscow and Beijing, this day was a strategic and psychological defeat. For Ukraine, it was proof that even when outgunned and outnumbered, the will to fight and the wisdom to wait can change the course of history. The world was watching, and the less people can understand what's at stake. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that matter.